comes from the Arizona Inn, a four-diamond, family-owned historic resort hotel and restaurant on Elm Street near the U of A. Information is at arizonainn.com.
I'm Tucson Weekly senior writer Jim Ninsel, and we're here to talk Zonapolitics. Joining me today is Tucson City Councilman Paul Cunningham, who represents the East Side, Ward 2. Councilman Cunningham, welcome to Zonapolitics.
Jim, thanks for having me.
So, you have voted recently for a resolution opposing the border wall that President Trump would like to see built between Tucson, Arizona and Mexico. Why was it important, do you think, for the Tucson City Council to step up on this issue? Well,
there's a whole bunch. There's a myriad of different issues. One is just the humanitarian part and sending that message. But I think the more important part is, like it or not, Mexico is Tucson's partner. They represent somewhere between 18 and 22% of our entire economic pie. They're our partners on so many levels, and sending that message that Tucson is anxious to still be their partners, Tucson is anxious to continue the positive relationship we have. I think that's a good message to send to our partners down south, and that's why I think that's why I supported this motion, and that's why I supported the resolution.
And switching topics, the Tucson voters supported your sales tax proposal to help with public safety and roads. What do you take away from that vote?
Well, I mean, you can look at it a lot of things. I think it shows that people are supportive of our first responders, are supportive of continuing to build roads. I think it showed some confidence. You know, 5 years ago, we went to the voters for a very modest property tax increase to try to catch up on some of the road work we had. By 2012, we were in some cases an 80% failure rate with some of our roads. We were so far behind that even to catch up was going to take a Herculean task. So we put that out to voters, and the Proposition 409 money that later became 409 money, we used 409 money, but that money went to all the things that we had put on the ballot and more. We came under budget in several projects and had some significant leftover savings to continue to use for roads. And people saw the results, and we went back to voters and said, hey, we got half of it done, but we've got to do the rest. And I think people had the confidence that we were going to use that money wisely. We have a citizens oversight task force. I think that the structure was good. The other thing was we had a significant amount of capital improvements and equipment needs within our first responders. This is a very clean way to address those issues, and we have one of the most professionally trained and one of the most professional police departments and fire departments in the country. And now we're also going to have two of the best equipped fire departments and police departments in the country, and the citizens of Tucson deserve that. And so I'm happy that we were able to get this across the line.
And it's a 5-year plan. The sales tax goes away after 5 years. What happens to the streets after this 5 years?
Well, hopefully we'll be in a situation where the maintenance of it will be back to routine maintenance. Hopefully we'll have some HERF money, and hopefully we'll have some funding in place to maintain those roads. As long as we keep them up, we're not going to have these huge outstanding capital needs.
There are two other efforts to increase the sales tax that are out there at this point, citizens initiatives that could be going to the ballot in November. One would increase the sales tax by 1/10 of a cent to help with the zoo. The other 1/2 cent to help with early childhood education. Are you supporting either of those?
The zoo one, I think, could make some sense. I think it may help us with our zoo being competitive. One of the things that I challenged the zoo folks, the Tucson Zoological Society, was to team up with the Desert Museum. And the reason I say that is because I think Tucson deserves to have one of the top zoological experiences in the world, but the way that they grade and rate zoos like Columbus Zoo and San Diego Zoo are kind of at the top. They rate it by different number of species, they rate it by number of acres, they rate it by a number of different metrics. And the only way we can be competitive is if we were able to combine the two entities, and that zoological experience at both the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum and the Tucson Zoo were kind of combined. So I challenged that piece of it. But I think, again, that 1/10 of a cent could make a difference in the conditions in our zoo and the living conditions for the animals. I think there's a lot of positives to it, But again, the timing is just very poor considering we just raised the half-cent sales tax.
What about the Strong Start Tucson?
So again, the Strong Start Tucson, we just went from 2 to 2.5 cents. I think going a half cent right now is something that I can't support, unfortunately. I understand my core values are of the belief that having strong support for our families for pre-K and for our kids, giving them a head start in school is a good thing. We have first things first money. We could reallocate some of the way that the state divvies out some of the daycare money to probably meet some of these goals. The city of Phoenix has a model where they augmented their pre-K system for $6 million. I've been collaborating with council member Shapira in Tempe about their model. So I think there's some other things we could do. If we were going to put a sales tax on the ballot for kids, I'd probably go more in the direction of maybe a full penny for like universal children's health care or something like that. I'm not really sure if Strong Start gives Tucsonans an advantage at this point.
You guys just passed a budget earlier this month, and talk a little bit about what you see as the highlights of what you're going to be able to do with this year.
Well, so this budget again, this is the sixth one we balanced in a row. Every year we try to put out the most responsible package we can. I've told this story many times to Tucsonans, and that is you get one call about potholes, the second you hang up, you write an email about potholes, and you publish in the newsletter that you fixed them, and somebody calls up and says, what about police? And then you do some things for police, and then you write an email, and then the next day somebody says, hey, wait, what about fire? Hey, wait, what about the bus? And so you really have to just balance all those, literally juggle all those balls in the air. And I think this package was a really responsible package. I'm really happy with how the manager did it. One of the things the manager did was he squirreled some money away to meet some of our pension needs, especially with the Hall case. We're probably not going to take a hit in our unfunded liability when we make our Hall case payment, which is basically there was a lawsuit in the state forcing cities to make a huge payment to catch up to some of the outstanding balances in the pension funds. And Tucson's actually in better shape than the rest of the state. So that's what I mean when I say the Hall case for our viewers. But the point is that the manager did a great job in putting money aside so we'd be able to make our payment and not compromise our unfunded liability for those funds. Moreover, there's about 25 million left over above what we finished with, which was still 15 million in the black. There's 8 million in water. The water enterprise came in $8 million ahead, which is outstanding. That's a testament to Tim Tomier and his team being more efficient and being able to do less with more. There was $2 million. We got an uptick in utility revenues. There was a $3 million uptick in state share revenues. There was another $8 million right after we passed our sales tax. The county passed a road tax, a property road tax, and our share will be another $8 million. So when you add all that up, there's some extra money in there. Now, it's pretty all been spent. I mean, some of it's going to go to augment our roads. We're going to use $3.5 million to augment parks, including there's $2 million in there to help redo an East Side park that was long overdue, Jesse Owens, and also replace some of the irrigation systems. We had $18 million in capital needs for irrigation in all of our parks overall, and we're going to be able to make a dent in that. So things are actually going pretty well. We experienced an uptick in jobs. We've gone from when we bottomed out at 419,000 people punching paychecks in the region. That was the bottom during the recession. We came in at 460,000 last month, 459, and so that represents almost 10% more people punching jobs than at the bottom of the recession. So, 10% of workers punching paychecks than at the bottom of the recession. So we had a number of different wins, and as a result, we had a pretty good package that I think that the Tucsonans can be proud of, and as we keep making these improvements, these little things like splash pads at public pools and having free pools during the summer for kids, and allowing the summer go pass, and being able to redo a few parks here and there, getting our roads fixed, continuing our service delivery with police and fire. I think that we're really a city on the rise, and I'm really proud of the work we've done in the last 5 years.
You mentioned parks, and there was some talk earlier this year that you might go for a bond for parks in November. Is that still on the table? Or?
I think right now, again, I don't think the timing is right for that yet. I think maybe a year or two down the road, depending on where we need to go, we'll take a look at what our actual capital needs are in parks. We're able to do a few things at a time. There's some other things I'd like to do in parks, but I don't want to bite off more than we can chew. We don't want to overexpand. We're having enough trouble just managing the parks. Let's get that department running. The new Parks Director, Joan Stouch, is outstanding. She's done a great job coming in and getting some results. So we're really proud of that, but we got a little bit more to go before we start talking about issuing another bond and going back out to the voters and taxpayers. They just took this hit for us, and let's prove to them that we're worth it before we go out and ask for more.
And Jesse Owens Park, you mentioned that. What are folks going to see over there?
So Jesse Owens Park is going to have an expansion. Well, it's going to have a parking expansion. That's kind of boring, but hey, extra parking is always needed. It's also going to have an expansion. We're going to have a new lighted field for soccer and football, so a lighted rectangular field. What was happening is we'd have Little League go on, baseball would go on, then football, then soccer. The grass would never go out until the summer, until monsoons. You'd have green grass for a month and a half, and then it would be brown and sandy for the rest of the year again. By doing it this way, each field will be used each season. We'll have greenery. You know, Jesse Owens serves over 1,400 youth athletes. It serves 6 different leagues. It's one of the most used athletic parks. It goes from Tucson youth football, fast pitch softball girls. It goes all levels of Little League. It's got USA Youth Sports out there. It's got AYSO, that's Arizona Youth Soccer Organization out there. Even PCJSL teams, that's Pima County Junior Soccer League, practice out there, and YMCA, a couple YMCA teams. So it's a very, very taxed park. And it's been neglected. In my opinion, it had been neglected. And so we went out and advocated for it. And I'm pretty confident that we'll get these things done. We'll also resurface the basketball court, perhaps cover it. And finally, we'll open that pool next summer as well. And so I'm really excited about the changes at Jesse Owens Park.
Got about a minute left, but there is this controversy over the U of A Honors College, where the University of Arizona is going to build a campus at 4th and University for the honors students, and there are some neighbors who are very concerned that there's no rezoning taking place here.
Well, it's not really this is a situation where there's a third party contracting with the university who are basically using the university to skirt the zoning laws that every other developer is expected to follow. And they're using the university. The university is allowing to get used by this firm from Texas, and I don't know who they think they are coming into Tucson and trying to tell us how to write our zoning laws. The bottom line is that the university enjoys their exemptions because of their university status, and if they're going to operate the Honors College, that's one thing. But this is not set up for a third party to come in and make money and skirt the rules that every other developer has to follow. As far as I'm concerned, the actions by the developer from Texas are unethical, and this is the kind of stuff that makes people fed up with both government and sometimes the private sector.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but I want to thank Tucson City Councilman Paul Cunningham for joining us here on Zonapolitics. We'll be right back with Mary Matiella, who is considering a congressional run against Congresswoman Martha McSally. Stay tuned.
Zonapolitics is made possible with the generous support of the Loft Cinema, Tucson's independent movie theater. The Loft features independent, foreign, and documentary films, cult classics, discussions with filmmakers, and much more, including the Loft Film Fest in November. The Loft is located at 3233 East Speedway Boulevard. Showtimes can be found at loftcinema.org. Support for Zonapolitics is provided by Hotel Congress in historic downtown Tucson. More information at hotelcongress.com and 622-8848. The Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce serves the business community in the bilingual, bicultural region of the Arizona-Sonora border and is a proud media partner with Zonapolitics. Learn more at TucsonHispanicChamber.org.
all of these young people from the community come together, actually like get up and do something.
We can do anything!
I think we've attracted like a lot of people that are like super passionate.
We're here at the No Ban, No Law.
If you come out of college, you have this experience, you know how things run, you have a huge leg up.
People who have ideas and who are dreamers, you know what I mean, who really want to get themselves out there. I think that they should come here.
And we're back with Zonapolitics. I'm your host, Jim Ninsel, and joining us now is Mary Mattiella, who had a long career as an accountant in the federal government and is now considering a campaign against Republican Congresswoman Martha McSally in Congressional District 2 next year. Mary, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invite.
So I think the first question on many people's minds is, who is Mary Mattiella? Tell us.
Well, I'm from this area. I grew up, my earliest memories were in Picacho, Marana. My parents were migrant farm workers, so we did farming in that area. At 8 years old, I came to Tucson. Grew up in this area. I lived on 32nd, made my first Holy Communion at Santa Cruz Catholic Church. Went to Pueblo High School, bachelor's and master's from the University of Arizona, so I'm a hometown girl.
And what did you do for your career?
Well, I made my career, my husband and I had dual careers in the military. I was a civilian, he was an officer in the Air Force. And through the many years that we both served, I was a civil servant for 30 years. I was mainly in financial management, budget, and accounting. After 30 years, I was a senior executive for the Forest Service. I was a senior executive for HUD. I worked at the Pentagon for the Department of Defense. I actually worked 28 years for the Department of Defense. Came home, retired, got called by the White House. President Obama was interested in giving me a political appointment, was Senate confirmed, and my last position was in government, was Assistant Secretary of the Army for Financial Management and Controllers, a big title for Chief Financial Officer of the Army. In 2010, I was responsible for $240 billion, which was equipped a million soldiers.
And now you're thinking, after retiring from all of this, you want to get into Congress. What made you decide you might want to run for Congress?
I want to continue serving this country. I want to continue working for people that depend on government for a lifeline. I was able to get a lifeline in education that made it possible for me to go to college, a lifeline in health that made it possible for me to get health care through TRICARE or military care. So many lifelines were thrown to me to make me successful, to make it possible for me to have a successful career. I want those lifelines, those social lifelines, to continue helping people to fulfill their dreams, to be part of the American dream. And so it's very important for me to continue helping people through making sure that government is working well, is looking out for the people in southern Arizona, is accountable. My whole career was about accountability.
And this week, a terrible incident in Virginia, actually, as the Republican members of Congress were practicing for a baseball game, a mass shooting. Yeah. Your reaction to what we saw there?
Well, I was horrified. I was horrified. Just one more time that a gun was in the hands of someone it shouldn't have been in. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, but I do believe that guns do not belong in the hands of criminals. Guns do not belong in the hands of mentally ill folks. We do need to take care of our mentally ill. We cannot leave them aside. Terrible consequences will happen. But yeah, this was a terrible thing. And we do need some legislation where we can make sure that, yes, we have a right to guns. It is our constitutional right. But those guns have to be responsibly owned And we have to make sure that the wrong people don't have them.
So background checks is what you're saying.
Yes,
We need
absolutely.
a stronger background check system.
Absolutely, yes.
One of the big votes, obviously, that Congress has taken in recent months was over the health care, their passage of the American Health Care Act, which reversed much of what the Affordable Care Act, the AKA Obamacare, did. Martha McSally voted in favor of this. Your thoughts on the American Health Care Act?
I do not want 23 million people to lose health care. We cannot be successful as a country or as people or as an individual if we are not healthy, if we do not have access to being able to take care of our very basic need of going to the doctor and being able to be healthy. So I think Martha McSally, I think that it is wrong to repeal the Affordable Care Act. I think that the Affordable Care Act needs to be improved. I am a product of single payer. You know, in the military we have single payer. It's called TRICARE. It's single payer. Our senior community has done well with Medicare. We've helped the disabled and the unfortunate, economically unfortunate folks with Medicaid. The states have put together some very good programs to help people with health care. It is a mistake to go backwards and take 23 million people out of health care.
And another vote last week reversing the protections of the Dodd-Frank Banking Act. Your thoughts on that particular vote?
Well, if you remember in 2008, and the legislation wasn't passed till 2010, but in 2008, people started losing their houses. And these are people that had the American dream in mind. People who thought that owning a house was doing what was important to their families and what was important to the country, to make sure that everybody had a roof over their head. Unfortunately, there was predatory lending, and folks and people got into mortgages that they could not afford, that they did not understand, and that took advantage of them. So what Dodd-Frank does is it just makes sure that there is no predatory lending, that people understand what they're getting to and that they can afford what they're buying. And so these are just protections. This involves transparency and accountability, and I think that's a good thing. The American public likes transparency and accountability. And so I believe that Dodd-Frank did the job it's supposed to do. And of course, there could be improvements in any kind of legislation, but we cannot go backwards in terms of predatory, allowing for banks to be too big to fail, because they will, and the American public will fail with them.
And we also have a situation where the City Council, the Board of Supervisors here recently passed resolutions against a border wall. Right. The Trump administration seems to be very interested in moving forward with the idea of building a wall between U.S. and Mexico. Of course, there are portions of the border that already have a wall, but there are a lot of portions that don't. Your thoughts on what the Trump administration is proposing in terms of this border wall?
The border wall is a waste of money. It will not be an effective way of keeping criminals out of the United States. It's going to cost $25 billion. Those $25 billion in taxpayers' money must be spent wisely, effectively. The border wall does not spend that money wisely and effectively. In fact, the wall could cost up to $70 billion, according to Senate Democrats. We can use that money for other things. For example, I read that free education, free college education, or debt-free education could cost $35 billion. So I think that taxpayer wants their money used wisely. Debt-free education is $35 billion. The border wall could be as much as $70 billion and not effective. It's not a good solution. We
also have this situation, we now have an independent counsel looking into the president. Are you concerned about what we're hearing about the possibility of obstruction of justice, of Russian collusion? Talk a little bit about, obviously you're not involved in the investigation, but talk a little bit about what you're thinking as you see Donald Trump facing these charges.
Well, I think the rule of law defines the United States of America. The rule of law is what makes this country the great country it is. The Constitution and all the amendments attached to it ensure that we are all held accountable for what we do. We are all held accountable for what we do. If we break the law, if we would obstruct justice, then we must be held accountable for that. No one is above the law in this country. This is what makes us great. So I think it is a good thing that we are looking at those issues of obstruction of justice. That is a good thing. That's what makes this country what it is, the great country that it is.
Do you have confidence that the Republican Congress will act as a check and balance against the White House?
I believe that the Republican Congress knows what their job is, and their constituents understand what their job is. And if someone is failing at doing their job, you're going to have people on the street reminding them what their job is. They will not be able to hide behind closed doors. The voter has power. We go out into the streets, we write our congressmen, and we tell them exactly what needs to be done. So I feel confident that people power will work.
Were you surprised by the election of Donald Trump as president?
Yes. Yes, I was. I was. And again, it goes back to accountability. And as legislators, as representative of the people, we have to be authentic and we have to be honest and we have to behave ourselves in a manner that is honorable. And I know that we're not all perfect, but what came out on Donald Trump before he was elected did not show him as being honest about things that he had done. And I'm just surprised that people didn't hold him up to that level of honesty that we all believe in this country.
You've worked in government, but you've never been in the political sphere. You're going to have to raise a lot of money for this campaign. What made you decide, I got to get into this race?
I want to make sure that the things that realize the American dream for me are realized for others. That the folks that live in South Tucson, the folks that desire to make a better life for themselves, wherever they are in the country, have the ability to make a better life for themselves, have access to education, have access to health, have access to all the social programs that make it possible for them to succeed, that our country, that our environment is taken care of. And so I believe that I have to step up as a person who understands government, who understands how a budget is formed, who understands how values are displayed in a budget. I think that I have to step up and say, this is what will make this country great, and these are the things that will diminish this country. And so I want to be in the front lines, making sure that we continue making the American dream possible for everybody.
We are going to have to leave it right there, but Mary Mathieu, thank you so much for joining us here on Zonapolitics. And that is our show for today. My thanks to our media partners at Tucson Weekly, Tucson Local Media, and Community Radio KXCI 91.3 FM, where our radio edition of Zonapolitics airs Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. My thanks also to the gang here at Creative Tucson who make Zonapolitics possible. If you want to check the show out online, you can find us at zonapolitics.com and creativetucson.org. And be sure to follow us on Facebook. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Zonapolitics is hosted by Tucson Weekly senior writer Jim Ninsel. The program is produced by Jennifer Powers Murphy and Danny Vinnick and edited by Jim Rundle. Special thanks to KXCI, Tucson Weekly, Brink Creative Digital, and all supporters who provide crucial funding for the program. Learn more about Zonapolitics at zonapolitics.com and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter.